Reflections on the verdict. On Saturday, July 13th, 2013, George Zimmerman, on trial for the killing of Trayvon Martin, was acquitted. Within days, indeed bare hours, people rallied, most in protest of the verdict and some in favor. Efforts, individual and organizational, were launched to encourage the Justice Department to investigate the possibility of charging Zimmerman with a violation of Martin's civil rights, whilst others offered support to the Martin family in the interest of filing a civil suit against Zimmerman. And our president, considering Martin's death a tragedy for America, and referring to America as a nation of laws in which a jury has spoken, called for calm reflection. In response to President Obama's counsel, I have spent many days and many hours in near constant contemplation, amid a myriad swirl of mental images and a flood of feelings concerning the shooting death of Martin, all that transpired in the aftermath, the increasingly intense media coverage, and the workings of our legal system, the trial, and the verdict, and the repercussions. At this moment, this is what I think. It is not possible for me to know what happened on that Sunday evening of February 26, 2012, in Sanford, Florida. Up until the shooting, only 2 people had any immediate knowledge of what occurred, and after Martin's death, only one, Zimmerman. Moreover, given my understanding of human nature and human perception of others, neither Martin nor Zimmerman could have known fully what the other was thinking and feeling. Still more, given that same sense of things that I hold true, especially as the Apostle Paul declares, now we look in a mirror dimly, that is, not knowing, never wholly knowing ourselves, neither Martin nor Zimmerman could have known fully what each thought and felt for himself. All this is to say, though we know that Trayvon Martin is dead by the action of George Zimmerman, in whose hand a gun was born and fired, we cannot be certain as to why it happened. We never can know all the causes that precipitated that disastrous effect. And the truth of this, and why it matters, was made manifest in the trial. Zimmerman was charged with a crime, second-degree murder or manslaughter. The purpose of the judicial proceedings from the viewpoint of the prosecution and defense, respectively, was to prove beyond reasonable doubt to a jury of peers that Zimmerman was guilty and innocent. It is here where our inability to know everything comes to bear. For without mutually verifiable and agreed facts, we humans are left with our reason to discern what statements or speculations sound more plausible, never an exact science. And even more, we're left with our feelings, which are rooted in our abiding senses of how things should be. In this, I think that a good measure of the public uproar about the verdict is that we Americans, in regard to our corporate consciousness, believe, desire, hope, pray that our legal system is designed and aligned to yield justice. That is, equitable treatment of all. Often translated, to paraphrase Jesus, that those of us who are least and last have equal standing with those of us who are first and most. In this instant case, the court ruling is seen by many as yet another moment when a member of the least, personified in Martin's young, black maleness, truly, I believe, a current American endangered species, was killed, the perpetrator, a member of the first, represented in Zimmerman's older, fair-skinned, son of a white father and Peruvian mother, maleness. For those enraged and engaged in protest, none of it, the death and the verdict, is fair. Now at this moment, and for many moments preceding and sure to follow, this is what I feel. I am a 61-year-old African-American man, born and raised in the United States. This is my 16-word shorthand, which, when embellished, means that, given my life experience and my ongoing reflections on that experience, race inevitably is a lens through which I view life and make meaning out of the random and, at moments, seemingly nonsensical goings-on in the world around me. There are those of us who say that race, manifested in the prejudice of learned and embedded negative presuppositions about the other, was not involved in the killing and in the trial and verdict. I feel that it is impossible for race not to have been a part and parcel of what happened. In Zimmerman's profiling of Martin, viewing his appearance, a young black man wearing a hoodie strolling through a gated community at dusk, as sufficient cause to stir suspicion. And in Martin's angry and soon violently defensive reaction to being viewed as questionable by his appearance alone, and thus followed by one who appeared to be a white man. And in various members of the court and the media protesting, I think, so strenuously as to strain my sense of credulity, that ethnic considerations held no bearing in the legal proceedings. Frankly, I at times am not sure what concerns, verily frightens me more, that the issue of race comes to bear, often unconsciously and insidiously, in every transaction between and among peoples, or that there are those of any and all colors who do not believe, I feel naively and unwisely, that race is an intractable condition of any human cross-cultural interaction. I digress. For purposes of transparency and greater honesty, I maintain that what one believes about race is largely influenced by one's experience of race. Hence, I do understand how one can and how another cannot perceive the reality and relevance of race. In my sojourn through life in this world, I have had abundant encounters and engagements with race manifested in prejudice, as I have already defined it, bigotry, which I define as prejudice expressed outwardly in word and action, and racism, which I define as bigotry with an element of power in the denial of privilege or opportunity. A few memories. I distinctly remember my father in his efforts to prepare my brother Wayne and me to see clearly and face squarely the world of his experience, a world as it has proven to be, only marginally advanced from his time. I remember my father counseling us repeatedly that we must strive to be twice as good as the white man in order to gain the same benefits. I remember my grandmother, Audia, my great-aunt Helen, my mother Lolita, my aunt Evelyn, my godmother Gertrude, teachers all, commanding that Wayne and I learn, absorb the English language, the King's English, my father oft opined, that we might not merely appear learned, but rather that we might be learned, introspective and reflective, and with an unoverly abundant treasure trove of words to to convey our thoughts. I remember various trips outside of our African-American middle-class neighborhood into the greater St. Louis area and in rural Missouri, and hearing the N-word directed at me with the vigor of familiarity, as if by some otherworldly gnosis beyond my power to comprehend. The speakers knew that word, that curse applied to me. I remember walking into stores and having sales personnel either not greet me while looking at me constantly and askance, or approach me and follow me along and down aisles of merchandise. I remember on 2 separate occasions being one of 4 finalists for rector's positions in largely white congregations and not being chosen. In both cases, the issue of race was a factor in the vestry's decision. In one case, by the refusal to discuss it for fear of that community having to identify openly a distasteful truth, and, contrarily, in the other case, several all too honest and bigoted outbursts. In the latter case, the bishop of that diocese, who personally had contacted me and urged me to enter the process, in part so that vestry could not say we could find no qualified black candidates to interview, offered his deepest apologies for having inadvertently set me up as a target for racism. These are only a bare few of my experiences that have shaped my conscience. So to be a 61-year-old African-American man, born and raised in the United States. Again, I understand how one can and how another cannot behold the reality and workings of race in the matter of the death of Trayvon Martin and the trial and verdict of George Zimmerman and the surrounding proceedings and the aftermath and in everything everywhere. And in light of all of this, I want to say that there are 2 professions that will never run out of work. Consultants, for as long as there are human beings in relationships, couples, families, groups, organizations, businesses, companies, churches, there is the need for the professional services of those who observe and describe patterns of behavior, helping people to learn and engage in healthy interactions. And funeral directors. For as long as there is life, which always ends in death, there is the need for the professional services of those who care for the physical remains of the dead. Well, at this moment in time, in light of multiple daily evidences of our human absence of love, unconditional benevolence one with another, and justice, unconditional fairness one for another, there is a 3rd vocation, our need for which is great. Prophets. Those who speak truth to power. Those who remind us of what we have forgotten. Those who assist us to practice what we on occasion may remember, but find too difficult to enact. I pray for a soon coming day when the heartfelt prayer of Moses may be fulfilled by, through, with, and in us. Would that all God's people be prophets, and that God place the Spirit upon them.